We are finally at the time of the year where we can talk about hockey again. It's so nice. It's almost, in football, there's really no off season because as soon as the season's done, then they start talking about the draft and they start talking about, this and that. And really in hockey, it's like it gets crazy around July 1st. And then you don't hear anything for a couple months, and then there's training camp and exhibition games. But now we're going to get actual hockey. So let's talk Penguins. Let's just get it out of the way. Are they going to make the playoffs, or is this going to be the same thing as the past few years where it's touch and go and it's borderline and maybe they make it, maybe they don't?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it's still going to be the same as we've seen the last couple of years. They're going to be right at that 7, 8, 9 seed at the end of the season, and we're going to be probably, sitting there on the last day of the season wondering if they are going to win or if the team they need to help them is going to win or lose. And I think that's just going to be the way the season's going to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean, they made some changes, but it seems like the biggest changes were on the bottom six. Would you say that at least the bottom six has improved? Not that it could get any worse, but there seems to be some improvement there, right?
Yeah, I mean, we hear every summer about we need to get younger, we need to get faster. I don't necessarily know if they did either one of those things. I mean, when you look at the bottom six right now, it's they added Cody Glass, Kevin Hayes, um, and I guess you could say Jesse Puljujärvi, even though he was here last year, but he was kind of splitting between Wilkes and here. They certainly didn't get any younger, though they are not the oldest team in the league anymore. The oldest team in the league is actually the Edmonton Oilers, which, if you could believe that. So I guess you can win with old guys, as the Oilers, except for they lost in the Stanley Cup final, as we all know. But yeah, they are the oldest team in the league. I think they're at like 30.1 or something like that. And the youngest team in the league is the Buffalo Sabres. So I guess by definition, the Penguins did get somewhat younger, but if you look at the names of these guys, the only really new additions to the lineup were Anthony Beauvillier, who it looks like he's going to play with Sidney Crosby. He's a veteran guy. Rutger McGroarty, he's the guy. He's the guy that everybody's talking about. He's 20 years old, but the way it looks right now, he's going to play on the third line. Now, you know, is he going to get more than 8 minutes a night? Let's hope so, because otherwise, there's no point in having him up here. Have him go play Wilkes-Barre, play top line minutes. But in a roundabout way, I don't know if I answered your question there, but they kind of got younger, but at the same time, they've got all these weird misfit veteran guys still filling out their bottom six.
It's the island of misfit toys, and that doesn't even scratch the surface of all the people that they acquired
Yeah.
this season. It was like a whole bunch of just outcasts, and hey, you throw a bunch of things at the wall and see what sticks. So, hey, good for them. But about Rutger McGroarty, this is the guy they traded what's his name? Um
Brandon Yeager.
Yeah, they traded him as basically a prospect for a prospect, and I guess the reason why Rutger McGroarty left Winnipeg was because he wanted playing time, and now he's with the big club. But I don't. I mean, at least initially, yeah, it's nice that he made the team, but I don't think he's supposed to be here, for the entire season, right? I mean, is this more of a situation that he'll probably be sent down and then maybe come up at some point during the season?
Yeah, I'll be interested to see if he sticks around for more than 10 games because they do have Nola Chari, who's on long term injured reserve, and Blake Lizotte, who is another kind of fourth line guy that they brought in. I'm not sure exactly what his timetable to return is. And then also Brian Rust. So when Brian Rust comes back, he's got obviously, when you look at this roster, he's probably the odd man out, McGroarty, and he'll be the first one to be sent back down probably. But to the Penguins' credit, it looks like they want to get him some games and see what he looks like at the NHL level. Um, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I did like the trade. I don't like the premise of the trade. I never liked to see a guy kind of demand a trade who's never even played a game at the NHL level.
Right. Like, who are you?
So I don't like the premise of it, but I do think that he is a better fit than Jaeger was for the Penguins. I think it's just a good, solid hockey trade for both teams. But we'll see. I mean, he's really, when you look at this lineup, like I said again, he's really the only young addition to this team right now, and it'll be interesting to see how much playing time he gets and if he even sticks around for the first 10 games.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody who sounded like he was the darling of training camp was Jesse Puljujarvi. Has he improved that much since last year? Is he, I mean, I know he had some injury issues. Do you think he'll be good on the third line?
I think that's a perfect spot for him. I think he'll get some kind of second unit power play time as well. I guess one thing to keep in mind with him is he did come off a pretty major surgery last year, and he did take a long time to recover from that. And he did play fairly well last year. I mean, he really tailed off towards the end of the season last year. And, we've seen this with him before, not even with the Penguins, just in his career in general, kind of flashes of brilliance, flashes of that kind of first round pick. And then, kind of just tails off as the season goes on. So, let's hope that he can sustain what he did in the preseason because he was definitely maybe the most impressive guy in the preseason. He had a ton of goals. He looked like he was healthy and had no limitations in his game. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, for sure. I think you put it well. He was kind of the darling of camp for this season for sure.
Another guy that was the darling of camp is this Harrison Brunick, who I believe they acquired on basically he was part of the Jake Gensel trade, right? They drafted him. One of the draft picks they got from the Jake Gensel trade, they drafted him. And there's almost talk of him making the team and playing for like 9, 10 games. But he must have been super impressive.
Yeah, I mean he's only 18, and there was definitely some talk of him making the team. If Erik Karlsson wasn't ready to go, he was probably going to make the team, but it looks like Karlsson's ready to go. So they're going to send him back to juniors. But yeah, I mean that Jake Gensel trade, I know it maybe wasn't popular at the time with a lot of people, but I think that's going to return them some pretty good results in the coming years. I think you'll probably just see him down at the junior level for most of this season. The Penguins likely don't want to start the time on his contract already, his rookie deal already, which they could have had him for 10 games before that would have started. But now that Karlsson looks like he's healthy, they're going to send him back to junior, let him kind of marinate there, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that Gensel trade was basically you got Bunting, who is basically Malkin's best buddy now. He's hopefully that net front presence they needed. You got this Brunick, you got like three prospects that are pretty darn close to coming up. It's like yeah, it sucks losing Jake Gensel, but it looks like a pretty good deal.
Yeah, yeah. I think the thing to watch is how well Wilkes-Barre does this year because they're finally, and I'm not saying they're there yet, but they're finally starting to rebuild their pipeline and starting to rebuild with some prospects. And this upcoming draft, the Penguins have a lot of draft picks, and I wouldn't be surprised if come trade deadline this year, if they're not trading a guy like a Lars Eller or a Noel Chari or Matt Nieto when he's healthy away to some other team and getting a third, fourth round pick because I think that's what Dubas is trying to do now. He's just trying to stockpile these draft picks and see what we get. I think the draft pick of the defenseman that we were just talking about was a third round pick. I mean,
Wow.
third round pick, you never know what you're going to find in these drafts. I mean, look at I know we've talked about this before. Patrick Hornquist was the last pick in his draft class, and he had one heck of a career. So there's never any downside to stockpiling draft picks because you never know who you're going to end up with.
Yeah. One person who might unfortunately be traded is Marcus Pettersson, who's on the last year of his contract. And I don't know, it kind of sounds like it might be another Jake Gensel situation where they trade him or whatever. Or do you think they'll re-sign him? He's only 28. Oh, hello.
It sounds like it might be one of those situations. I think we went dead for a second there.
I think we're good now.
Okay. Um, yeah, I think the Pedersen situation is going to be another one of those where we'll see how the team performs this season. If they're 10 points out of a playoff spot, then maybe he gets traded. If not, then he'll stick around. But I do think he is actually a player that the Penguins do want to keep long term, because regardless of who he's going to play with, most likely Karlsson this year, or who we'll see how the season plays out. Maybe he ends up back with Letang. Those guys are here for several more years, Letang and Karlsson. So you need that kind of steady, stay-at-home guy to play with one or both of them, and there really isn't anyone, in the system like that, or that could eat up the minutes like Pettersson does. He's just that kind of steady, solid guy that's going to kind of make up for the run and gun style that Karlsson and Letang are going to play.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see if that whole Erik Karlsson thing just works out. Now, this is the second year of him being on the team. Do you think, and I know he's been hurt, but do you think Karlsson will do better this year now that he's had a year in the system?
Yes. And I think also having David Quinn here as a coach that's coaching the power play and coaching the defense. Remember, that was his coach in San Jose when he had the 100-point season. So I think that is also going to be a big help for him. It's going to have an influence on him. And I think that he's going to have a really good season. I'm not saying he's going to have a 100-point season, but, I wouldn't put 70, 75 points out of the question for him.
I think we'd be thrilled with it. I think, yeah, I think that would be almost a point a game. Yeah, I'll take that. The big question mark in the defense is, and this actually shocks me, Ryan Graves. He looked clueless last year, and it kind of sounds like he looked a little clueless so far this year. It got to be make or break for him. I mean, we can't have this all the time. Right now, he's on the third freaking pairing. Uh, is he a disaster?
I think the third pairing's a good place for him. I mean, it's crazy. He's still got 4 years left on his deal if you include this season. But I think that's actually a good place for him, because last year I think that they were maybe trying to have him do too much, or maybe himself was trying to do too much. And now he could just play on that third pair where they're just like expected to go out there and not give up a goal. You don't have to go out there and try and score a goal. You're just being asked to go out there and play solid defense and then get off the ice. And I think he'll maybe thrive in more of that role, because he always, if you look at where he's always played, he always thrived in a system that was very structured, especially when he was in New Jersey. And I think by him just being cast into this bottom pair role, he knows, okay, my job is to just go out there and play defense and not get scored upon. I don't have to worry about generating offense. I don't have to worry about any of this other stuff. I just have to go out there and not get scored on. And I think that will help him. And the same thing with him. We always see it. Defensemen are better in a second year when they're in a new situation. I know the example we always bring up is like Gonchar, or like
Paul Martin.
a situation, but it does happen. So I think Graves and Karlsson will definitely have kind of bounce back seasons. And I do think, even though that's a crazy contract to have a sixth defenseman, tied
Right.
for 5 years or 4 more years after this, but it is what it is. It's a pretty much an untradeable contract. So, um, you know, it's an ideal situation for him. The contract's not ideal, but I think the bottom six pair or bottom three pair for Graves is the place for him to be.
It's better to get solid bottom three defensive pair minutes than be a complete liability and clueless and cause goals against. So hey, whatever, we'll take whatever we could get from the dude. Just don't be an idiot. But then Matt Grelzik will probably be opposite Letang on that first pair. He's new. What have we seen from him?
Yeah, he's going to kind of be that stay-at-home guy that let's face it, Letang and Karlsson need opposite them. He's a solid NHL guy. He was with Boston the last couple seasons. Just obviously got a lot of playoff experience playing with Boston. Just that, I mean, this was basically Dubas's big splash in free agency. This is the guy that he kind of circled and said, I'm not going to make a big splash. I'm not going to sign guys to 7-year contracts, but this is the guy that I think can play in our top pair, or, depending on if you consider Karlsson or Letang the top defenseman. But, he could play in our top pair, eat up a lot of minutes, and just be that kind of steadying force back there. Kind of like Marcus Pettersson. I don't know if he'll be as good as Pettersson, but kind of in that same mold.
Hopefully. Hopefully. It can't be easy playing with a Letang or a Karlsson, somebody that's just a defenseman in name only. Basically, they're just basically not another forward out there. So yeah, that's it takes a skill to play with people like that. Um, on the goalies, we still have Tristan Jarry, which just makes me so sad. But it looks like Ned is hurt, and so Bloomquist is the backup goalie right now.
That's correct. Yeah. Well, speaking of untradeable contracts, Tristan, unfortunately for Kyle Dubas, he's not going anywhere. At the time, I think we talked about it last year. I didn't blame Dubas for the contract. I thought 5 years was a little bit too long. I was thinking maybe 4. But if you looked at the goalie market last summer, there wasn't anybody out there. That was his best option. And, you knew what you were getting with him. Again, I wouldn't have gone as long on the term, but I do truly believe that it's a goalie battle. I don't think that Sullivan's just gonna hand the reins to Jarry this year. I think the minute that he falters, you're gonna see Nedeljkovic in there. It's a shame that Nedeljkovic got hurt in the preseason, and it sounds like it's more like a week-to-week injury. So it's giving Jarry every chance in the world to really solidify himself. But the question is, will he? We're going to see Bloomquist as well. This could be a good thing for Bloomquist. He's a young guy and by all accounts, the future goaltender of this organization. So we'll see, what he can do as well. But right now, it's Jarry's net to lose because of the injury to Nedeljkovic and Bloomquist having really never played an NHL game before.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like at this moment you're not really looking over your shoulder unless Bloomquist, yeah, he's only 22 and he's the goalie of the future. Maybe he'll be the goalie of the present. I don't know. You never know. He might go crazy and just stand on his head.
Yeah, I mean anything's possible. You just play off adrenaline. You're a rookie. You don't know any better. So we'll see what happens. He's going to get some games. There's some back-to-backs. It's a busy month for the first month of the season, and some tough road games after the home opener. I think they go on the road for 4, maybe 5. But it's a pretty busy month. So Bloomquist is definitely going to get some games.
I've heard talk, or I've heard them talk a lot about the power play, how we've changed our philosophy, how they're gonna be more aggressive or some crap like that. Do you think there'll be any change in the power play?
I do. I think that David Quinn's actually a pretty good power play coach. But as we've seen since Crosby and Malkin have got here, it doesn't matter who the power play coach is. If the players go out and do whatever the heck they want, then it doesn't matter what the strategy is. I've actually seen that they've been practicing power play with 2 defensemen. Now, will that change when Brian Russ comes back? I don't know. But that's interesting. And 2 right-handed defensemen on top of it. So I'll be interested to see tomorrow night if and when the Penguins get a power play, what that looks like. It can't get any
Yeah,
worse. I mean, it can't get
right.
any.
It can't get any worse.
I think they gave
Um,
up 13 shorthanded goals last year.
yeah, yeah. At this point, not giving up a shorthanded goal is a successful power play. Yeah, I mean we've talked about this before. There's no coach that tells them, "Hey guys, don't shoot the puck, just pass it around. It's okay. It's whatever they feel like doing out there." So yeah, you just hope for the best. Um, the top two lines really haven't changed much. We know Rust is hurt and Bavilier is in Rust's place on the top line, but are we gonna expect anything different from the top two lines? I mean, it's nice that Bunting is going to be there for a full year, and I think he did help a lot. But you still got Malkin and Raquel on that second line, and it looks like Drew O'Connor on that first line.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like it's O'Connor, Crosby, Bavilier for right now, and then Bunting, Malkin, Raquel. The second line, you know, it goes the way that Malkin's going to go. We saw Malkin start the season last year really well. Him and Riley Smith, of all people, they were averaging almost a point a game for the first like 10 games last season, and then I'm not exactly sure what happened after that, but I think Sidney Crosby's still going to have a really good season. I predict he might have the best season that a 37-year-old player ever had. I could definitely see him getting back up close to the 90 points that he had last season. Um, but staying healthy, of course, which him and Malkin have actually played every game the last two seasons. Um, I saw Malkin joked. He said maybe I'll miss one game this season and things will turn out differently because the last two seasons, me and Sid played every game and we didn't make the playoffs.
There you
Um,
go.
yeah, so you know if they could reduce Malkin's ice time a little bit because I feel like Crosby can play probably 50 minutes a night and it wouldn't have any effect on him. But Malkin, it does seem to have an effect on him as the season goes on. And I'm not suggesting like putting him on a second power play unit or anything like that, but if they can like pick their spots to maybe reduce his ice time a little bit if they're losing a game 5-0 or if they're winning a game 5-0 in the third period, maybe take that opportunity to kind of do. I hate this term. It's more of a baseball term, like load management or pitch count or whatever you want to call it. But I think that would really benefit him if they could figure out some way to do that. I think I think he's going to bounce back too and have a little bit of better season than last year, if only because I think the power play is going to be much better this season than last.
Yeah, yeah, and I think a full year with Bunting will help. But yeah, at some point you're gonna at some point, I mean, Malkin's 38. You're gonna have the you're gonna have a talk like when you like, should we put Grandpa in a home? At some point, he's gonna fall off, and you're gonna have that situation. It's like, what do we do with him? He's a legend. But it might come a point this year or next year or whatever where it's like it's not working out for you on the second line, man. So I don't know. I mean, it's you don't see a whole lot of 38-year-olds playing hockey.
No, there's very few players that are getting the minutes that he's getting at age 38. Like you look at like a Corey Perry, he's still in the league and he's playing for the Oilers and he's playing on the fourth line.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily comparing Corey Perry to Evgeny Malkin, though in their primes they were both amazing players. But when you get to the age of 38, 39, 40, you're usually playing on the fourth line, with the exceptions of like Malkin, Crosby, and Patrick Kane is still getting it done at a fairly advanced age as well.
Crystal Tang is also 37, and nobody's talking about that because I think he and Crosby are just workout freaks, and I don't think anybody could touch them in terms of conditioning. So there's no worry about those guys.
No, I mean, hey, he's still 10 years behind Chris Chelios. Chelios played, I think, one or two games for the Atlanta Thrashers when he was 47 years old. So,
Wow.
the Thanks still got a lot of time to catch up to Chelios.
I remember Paul Coffey also played into his 40s or something like that. There's something about defensemen, which is funny because they play more minutes than anybody else on the ice, but they could, some of them can go forever. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, if you can skate, you can play in this league a long time if you can skate.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I'm just so happy it's back. Do you have any picks on who might win the Stanley Cup?
Boy, it's hard to pick against the Oilers. I think this is probably the year that they break through. I know it's I like the additions that they made. Um, I I question the goaltending though. Skinner has really never proven himself. Um, and Penguins fans probably won't like to hear this, but I think the Rangers are probably the best team in the East. The Rangers or the Devils. The Devils have legitimate goaltending now with Markstrom, and they are right there. And obviously, you can't discount the Florida Panthers. They won the Stanley Cup last year, and they largely are bringing back the entire team. So I would say probably Rangers and Panthers are the two best, and then the Devils are kind of that up and coming team that probably needs a year's worth of playoff experience before they get to that next level.
I hated McDavid, but now I feel bad for him. Um, what there's all those comparisons to Crosby and oh, he's so good and McJesus and all that, but he basically put the entire team on his back and carried them to a game 7 in the Stanley Cup final and almost pulled it off. And then afterwards, I'm sure you saw that video. He's like crying and beside himself. I mean, I feel bad for him now.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, and again, Penguin fans will like to hear this, but when Ovechkin won the cup several seasons ago, I was actually happy. You
Yeah,
know,
me
I,
too.
he's a great player, and everybody would always say, "Oh, you didn't win a cup; it tarnishes your legacy, whatever." So I was happy for him to win a cup, and honestly, I would be happy for McDavid to win a cup as well. He is such a great player. I mean, he already one of the greatest players of all time, and I think to solidify his place in history, he needs to win at least one cup, and I think he has the team to do it this year.
It just goes to show how freaking hard it is. You could be the best player in the world, and that helps, but you need a good team. I mean, look at Lemieux, his first 6, 7 years, he didn't even make the playoffs. Until he got help, they didn't do much in the playoffs or the Stanley Cup. Crosby, I mean, if it wasn't they very nearly didn't win in 2009, and it's just you need a good team. It's just not one person. It's just such a tough team game.
Especially now with 32 teams. Back when Mario won the cup, I think it was like 24 teams in the league,
And they
and
still didn't make the playoffs.
that was difficult. Yeah. So now you're one out of 32 instead of one out of 24, and it's hard, man. I mean, that's why they call the Stanley Cup the hardest trophy to win in sports. It really is. I mean, just four grinding rounds of playoffs and nearly 3 months of just going through battle after battle every other night. It's not easy to win the Stanley Cup.
It's insane. It's insane. The difference between the intensity in a playoff game and a regular season game, it's like almost like a factor of 2 or 3. And then you're doing that every other night for 2 or 3 months. It's amazing. It's amazing. What was it, the when they won the second cup in 2017, it's like you could tell they were just so tired, and then even in 30, even in 2018, it's like they almost won, but I think they just ran out of gas. You only have so much in you.
Yeah, you saw it with Tampa Bay too. They got back to the final that third year, but you could tell they were exhausted. They
Yeah.
were they were exhausted, and it's to even get to three finals in a row, let alone two like the Penguins did in 08 and 09 and 16 and 17. Just to get to two finals in a row is a heck of an accomplishment. Like what the Florida Panthers just did, they lost to Vegas. Then they beat Edmonton just to get back there 2 times in a row. That was one of the reasons I wasn't necessarily quick to just say Florida and Edmonton,
Right.
because this is going to be the third year for the Panthers on a long playoff run, and that really takes a toll on you after a while.
It's just not going to happen. It's just yeah, it's just too much of a toll. All right. So where can people find you, follow you, and get more of your work?
You can follow me on Twitter at PGHVC. I'm currently a journalistic free agent. The Fisher report, unfortunately, doesn't exist anymore. Stan Fisher is, I think, 94 years old now, so he's kind of scaling back a little bit on what he's doing. So he's just more focusing on his weekly article in the hockey news. So if anybody's looking for a hockey writer, please reach out. But in the meantime, you'll still see me posting stuff on Twitter, and I'll still be definitely tweeting out stuff about the Penguins and the NHL in general.
94. I hope it to make it to 64. My good 54, I'd be happy with. My goodness.
Yeah,
That's crazy. He's still doing it.
I think he deserves to scale back a little bit.
Yes. All right. Hey, thanks so much.
All right, we'll talk again soon. Thank you.
See you.